Hello everyone, welcome to Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay mother-loving Packers, as would Tom Grossi said. And it so happens that, I have not that many people around me that watch football, but when they do, they happen to be Broncos fans. It feels like I do not watch that many analysts out there, or I definitely didn't 2 years ago. But both of the guys that kind of gave me trust in myself, as well as showing me the benefits of doing stuff like this, are both happen to be Packers fans. I'm talking about Tom Grossi and that franchise guy. Both of these guys, if you are not following them and you somehow follow me, I absolutely freaking recommend you to do so, because both of them are insane content creators, and I don't want to push one above the other, but I have to give a huge kudos to what type of community Tom Grossi has been able to work and bring together to raise so much money towards charity. Just 2 weeks ago, he finished $1 million stream for charity, and during 5 or 6 days, they have been able to raise it up for a charity. So huge shout out to Tom Grossi, huge shout out to that franchise guy. Both of them I highly recommend. Both of them are Packers fans. With that being said, let's check on how this Packers team did in 2024. And as usual, we'll start with reviewing their draft. And as their first pick, they went for Jordan Morgan. And as you can see, I was not a huge fan of this draft. I felt they were better opportunities, and I did not really feel about Jordan Morgan as a first round prospect. And so far, unfortunately for me, unfortunately for the Packers, I have been right. He lost starting job to Sean Ryan, 7th rounder 3 years ago. And when he was out there, he did not look like a problem. He also suffered season-ending injury. So was he liability? No. But do you expect first round player to lose his job where they clearly wanted to push him? Despite Ryan playing better, they were kind of snap in, snap out. Ryan just took the job, and I don't think he would get on the field even if he stayed healthy. With that being said, I feel like there is clear path for him to be a starter next season. We will talk about it later, but I do not feel discouraged by his tape in year one, but I do feel discouraged by the lack of starts that he was able to gather. With that being said, let's shift to their pick where I was critical, and they were freaking right, because Adrian Cooper, what a player for this defense. He was revelation. He started slow in terms of getting snaps, but pretty soon it became clear that they absolutely need to play him, because he was just freaking insane. His ability to blitz, his ability to cover, everything was there. He put out one of the best rookie linebacker tapes that I have ever seen, that I frankly feel like league has seen in last 15 years. Huge kudos to Edge Cooper, and the sky's the limit for this guy. I don't feel like it's out of the question that next year, at this point of time, we'll talk about him in the category behind just Roquan Smith and Fred Warner. He might be that insanely good. Huge kudos for them to, I would say, find him. It felt adequate for a lot of guys out there. So they were kind of wrong too, because I don't think anybody expected Edge Cooper to do what he did year one. Insane value, insane player. The only thing that limits him is he went out for a couple of games. He was limited from the start, so the sample size is not full season. But if he was playing like that across 1,000 snaps, we would have yet another from good backup to amazing starter jumper, because he freaking deserved it. Now let's go towards another pick. They clearly were fed up with how their safety room looked for several years now, and they've invested heavily. They brought Xavier McKinney for a huge free agent contract that, year one looked insane. And they've invested into Javon Bullard, who I had as the best safety in the draft, and felt like this was a steal. Year one, John struggled more than I would hope for him, especially when there was a presence of Xavier McKinney next to him. Though I would say there are some things that limit the negativity about how Javon played, because they freaking asked him a lot. Not every rookie safety is tasked to do so many things as Javon Bullard. Just to give you a perception of what I mean by this is they were playing him as a slot, as a free safety, as box. He was playing kind of all over the field. It was because of the injuries, because of Evan Williams, who we will talk very soon after Javon Bullard. But with the amount of stuff that they were throwing at his plate, I don't feel that bad about him struggling. I felt like overall he's a nice complement to Xavier McKinney, because if there was one area of his play that did not look bad, was his run defense. Or that did not look bad, looked very promising. It was his run defense, which is something that Xavier McKinney is always going to be lacking, that top trait, because he is not this huge player. He's a twitchy ball hawk, not necessarily what you imagine great run defenders to be. So he struggled a little bit more than I would hope, but I'm still not discouraged by what I've seen based on the amount of stuff they thrown at him. Then we go for Evan Williams, and here pretty much everybody I watched, everybody I've heard talk, felt like this was a huge reach from the Packers, and for me too. I had him as a day 3 pick, and even potentially an undrafted player. So I was kind of shocked that they've picked him. Brian Gutekunst tend to make interesting picks, but boy oh boy, he freaking nailed this one. Evan Williams was kind of the reason why Javon Bullard was kind of going all over the field, because that's where Evan Williams is, I would say, at his best. You want him around the ball. You want him, I would say, in poor, at this point very poor, Kyle Hamilton comparison in terms of you want him where the ball is at. And with that, it's not always at the same area. So they were really mixing him and Javon Bullard where they are on the field. I would say utilizing Evan's strength and perhaps enhancing some of the Javon weaknesses at the process. But what a huge rookie year for Evan Williams. And again, limited sample size. He did not play the full season of snaps. He struggled to get out there from week 1 and had missed a game or two here and there with an injury. But what we saw out there, that was damn impressive. So they went from having no safety or problem safety to Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard in one off season. Yeah, it's fair to say that they absolutely fixed their safety issue to the point that it now might be their strength. They did not really get too much out of the other guys, though. Tyron Hooper, did he even get on the field? Let me check on that one. Tyron, yeah, he played 18 snaps. Third downer. So when you're praising Brian Gutekunst, it also comes with sometimes he just kind of wastes really valuable picks. With Marshawn Lloyd, I feel like it was due to injury, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He went out there for 10 snaps week 2, then suffered an injury, and whilst being injured, he also needed an appendectomy. So they kind of didn't rush him back, and they didn't really need to, as we will take a look why they did not. With the running back room, Marshawn, I'm not discouraged, because he really didn't have a chance to show himself off based on the injury. With Tyron Hooper, he's not super young. He's going to be 24 pretty soon. 91st pick. Yeah, you make some and you miss some, and this, as of right now, like this really looks like a whiff. But yeah, like we said so many times with linebackers, it takes a couple of years. That's probably why you don't take two. Yeah, it's great that Andrew Cooper was like this, such an insane hit. But you kind of have other needs, and if like there is a huge chance of like both of them actually not hitting on the rookie deals, that was a huge risk, and fortunately it paid off in Andrew Cooper, but in Tyron Hooper it did not. They had so many freaking picks that, at the end of the day, some of them needed to whiff in a way, because there is not even that many like roster spots, and they really didn't get too much from these guys. So it was pretty much the high end picks really delivered, or like really got the opportunity to play. The low end really did not. So with that being said, the draft is, I would say, kind of typical Packers draft. They were able to find really insane contributor in Edge Cooper. Really great steal in Evan Williams, it seems like. Adequate player in Javon Bullard, and I would say in Jordan Morgan. And also, kind of throw some really valuable picks out of the window, it seems like, on Tyron Hooper. And I'm not like going to sit here and say that like 5th round picks in this draft were like totally without the chance to hit on a starter. But again, like we are still year one of this draft. I would say it's a good, not necessarily excellent draft. Now let's take a look at how this roster did in 2024. Oh, I forgot about Michael Pratt. He did not get a chance to play. But like as a cheap backup, I thought they would do very well with him. He's gone. So I don't know like why this necessarily happened, why they kept Sean Clifford over him. What did not click, because he felt like interesting player to have on the roster for years to come. He's not there anymore. Now let's check how this team actually did. So Jordan Love and Malik Willis. So the season started for the Packers in nightmarish game against Philadelphia in Mexico, because in that game not only they lose, but Jordan Love also got injured, and like first news was like he might be out for the season. Luckily he wasn't. He missed about 4 games, and in his absence Malik Willis stepped in. That Malik Willis from the Titans that they kind of let go very easily. Like to be fair, he did not necessarily show anything with the Titans that would justify like making him starter, but this was still like just 2 years into his career, so they got cheap what they thought like was a backup, and what I would say everybody thought like not a very good backup. But when he stepped in, he looked like a competent quarterback. Like, is there a path for him to be a starter? Probably not. It's not like you would expect him to go on like Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, this type of journey. But they must feel really good with him for yet another year on cheap. And, in case Jordan Love gets injured, which can happen, I feel like they feel good about Malik Willis as their backup. And for Malik, having 2 years under Matt LaFleur to learn, to grow, I feel like he could be a very interesting piece next offseason for a team that either brings a veteran QB and like have him as this type of a bridge, or goes for the rookie QB to bring Malik Willis as like some sort of competition. I do not feel like he's going to net like super big contracts, but like something in the ballpark of like 1 year, $8 million could be very interesting, like dart throw from some teams that would need a QB, because he looked really competent. And yet another year with Matt LaFleur, like we've seen, it's not like super surprising with Sam Darnold, with Baker, that just year before they kind of rejuvenated their career, they spent time Sean McVay, with Kyle Shanahan. It's not coincidence, guys. If you are former, like highly touted prospect, and your first stints did not work out, go towards offensive gurus. Learn, learn, learn. You will get a chance. As an injured backup, as backup for case of injuries, or even possibly as a starter. I'm not saying like Malik Willis has the insane traits that you would like necessarily expect him to get some type of starter deal eventually in the future. But if he continues to play like that whenever he's called upon, nothing is out of the window. And I feel like it's his best shot to keep 1 year in the Green Bay and then go on to be on the market, put like Matt LaFleur on the phone. Like, look, this guy was like really good in practice. He was a great teammate. Perhaps he can get a shot. But enough talking about Malik Willis. Let's talk about Jordan Love. And his second year as a starter, it was up and down. to be fair, Jordan Love is a huge risk taker. Some of his games look ugly, as we could have seen in the playoffs. But also, like sometimes because when he looks bad, he looks really bad. But he doesn't necessarily look bad like the whole game. That's like good thing about Jordan Love, that he has kind of this mentality of a shooter from to say from NBA, where like if Steph Curry misses 5 threes in a row, yeah, let's go for a 6th one. I mean, in NBA missing not a free throw, a 3-pointer. In NBA missing a 3-pointer does not carry so much weight as throwing an interception. So you would like him to be able to not really like be as not to say arrogant, but like without conscience in a way, like what happened. You would like that to be toned down, but not necessarily like hugely, because it could be really good strength when you don't feel and don't play affected by what happened in previous set of rounds. Not in terms of that you don't learn about defense and how they attack you, but in terms of you are not letting things spiral out of hands based on the unsuccess of previous throw. Like you might throw another interception, but it's like you are a risk taker. That's what can happen. It's not influenced by, because I've thrown a previous one, I'm just not in a good state of mind as of right now. So that's something that's valuable, but at the same time, it could lead to some really ugly situations with Jordan Love. How do I feel about Jordan Love and his future? Slightly less optimistic than I did before the season, but like it dropped 5%. When I talked about Jordan Love previously, I said like, because Packers did this thing about like putting him behind Aaron Rodgers and kind of letting him develop, it's not necessarily a path to success. It's not going to work out for a lot of young guys, and it's not even a path to success financially, because like I said, there was 1 year when they played him and then they needed to make a decision whether to pay him and how much. So from that perspective, I feel like that financial commitment year from that commitment looks better, because this was not an insane drip, which was possible, at least in my head, with like the lack of sample size on Jordan Love. There was like 5 to 10% chance in my mind that he looks atrocious out there, like that he just spirals it out of control, that his aggressive decision making and not necessarily great accuracy, which unfortunately is still a huge part of his game, that he's not like super accurate QB, that could lead to him really dropping massively. Because like, to be fair, he had 8 or 9 games in a row when he looked amazing. Previous 8 games, not so much, and that was the whole sample size based on which you sign him or resign him. So I feel better about handing it as that contract. I don't necessarily feel better about him as a QB. I'm just like glad for the Packers that it didn't spiral. Now let's shift towards running backs. Sorry guys if you see me a little bit of sweat. I am a little bit under weather, hence the red face. It's not that I would be drunk, it's slightly under weather, but I felt like not only that I want to give you this episode and put it out there, but also with the Packers, it kind of feels like adequate to be a little bit sick given the weather they play in. Back to the roster point, Josh Jacobs. What a year he had. He definitely deserved to be put into elite starter category back again. And I know he was not the storyline. It was Saquon Barkley, justifiably so. It was Derrick Henry. It probably was Jahmyr Gibbs after that. But Josh Jacobs had an insane year. He was, for some parts of this year, he was the Packers offense. Especially later part of the season, he was the guy really dragging this team down. No, not down, dragging this team up. And his 4.4 does not look super efficient, but you need to realize he's a 3 down back. He plays not every snaps, but he is really your workhorse. You put everything on his table. So some of the games he obviously will lack stamina. Also, you have to realize that their offensive line is not necessarily great in terms of run blocking. Also, for several games, it was Josh Jacobs is running because we have Malik Willis, who was running 30 times a game in those situations. So with that all being said, 4.4 is really deceptive, and he was one of the 3 best running backs out there. He truly was magnificent. And they, luckily for them, with Marshawn Lloyd not being able to play, they found really nice complement and kind of a guy that gets Josh Jacobs a little bit of a breather. And it's not you have the same quality of a player, but he, and now we talk about Emmanuel Wilson, whenever he stepped on the field, he definitely used to his advantage that defenses were struggling, were down by Josh Jacobs, and he was very nice complement to him and kind of a guy that allows him to breathe and allows him to keep his stamina across the whole game. So for an undrafted player that they've picked up last offseason, I think it was 2023 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, really nice year. And compare that to AJ Dillon, who they kind of brought back but did not use. This was night and day. This is a backup running back that Packers can be absolutely happy with. And with Marshawn Lloyd, hopefully being able to return to full health, this room is a strength of the Packers, because you should have Josh Jacobs as your absolutely top player, and then Emmanuel Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd to give you versatility and give you some solid play when Josh Jacobs is out. Obviously, if Josh Jacobs gets injured suddenly, you don't necessarily have a great backup. Though I would is there a world in which Emmanuel Wilson can carve himself a nice RB2 role towards the point that perhaps he will sign next contract with someone else than Packers and could be their lead running back? I mean, it's still such a small sample size that predicting that would be really guesswork, nothing more than that. But like I said, with guys like Tyler Algier, and I'm not going to compare him to Tyler Algier in terms of quality, but we might be talking about him hitting free agency age 27, age 28, running behind Josh Jacobs and having around 1,500 snaps under his belt. That could be a guy that you really want to take a punt into years if you are other team than the Packers, and perhaps even the Packers themselves, because Josh Jacobs is going to be approaching 30 at that point. He's still freaking insane, but it's going to be approaching 8,000 snaps. The wear and tear on his body might be quite big at that point of time. Anyway, really nice running back room. And now we move towards the room that is on the surface, it looks really solid. When you dig deep, this is the room that could be a huge headache for the Packers going forward. But we start with great news. Jaden Reed, second year, really confirms himself as the best wide receiver that the Packers have on the roster, the most healthy one. and a guy that is not an alpha, is not one, like in an ideal offenses, he's your very good two. Here he kind of is their leading wide receiver. Is it in him to be an alpha? I don't necessarily think so. Though, like, still just 2 years within his career, so I cannot rule it out. But really nice second rounder 2 years ago that they've not found. Like, he was picked up as like a solid value, not necessarily something as a steal. But now we switch our talk towards two guys that are the headache, and that's Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. Both of these guys, when healthy, are good players. Not necessarily insane players, but that's partly because their career has been severely limited by injuries, and about that we talk like 3 years into their career. With Romeo Doubs, it's concussions, and like just like with Tua, you kind of don't know if the next concussion is going to be the last, like the same with Chris Olave, or like are they already past the one that really should be the last one for them. I know it freaking sucks, and I would say it sucks much more for Dobbs because he did not secure the bag like Chris Olave didn't either, but at least like he has like better rookie contract to secure him for like a decent life, I would say, like good life. It's not like they earn pennies. But for Romeo Doubs, I feel like he's going to try to continue with his career. I'm just always worried for a guy that, like, the scenes when he was out there were horrendous to watch, and it sucks. It really, really sucks for Romeo Doubs. And for Christian Watson, like, I mean, you can call him fortunate because like his injuries don't have like potential brain damage in them, so that's like kind of good. But his legs, his hamstrings just cannot keep up with him putting full NFL workload towards his body. And there were some positive news last offseason that they were able to figure out what the problem is and address it. Yet again, he went down for a huge part of the season. And you have to question, like, how much can we count for these guys? And at the same time, where the headache is, like, if you try to replace them, if you try to, like, bring some other guys into this room, what will you do when these guys are healthy? Because it's not like you don't have some, like, decent options. Like, Dontavion Wicks is a really nice 4. Bo Melton, for what he is, very cheap. Number 5 is also a good option. Can you really feed that many mouths when you want to run a piece of the football because you have Josh Jacobs? And, like, you know, if both Watson and Doubs are healthy and you brought yet another guy into this room, like, how are you going to, like, make it happen? How are you going to feed all the mouths you want? And ultimately, like, that would be like bad use of the resources. So I feel like how they will approach offseason in terms of bringing guys towards this position, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency, is going to not tell us everything because they can just flip a coin. Perhaps they could take a risk, but they definitely know much more about where these guys are in terms of their health for the future. So if they go out and they sign wide receiver, you know, like Devontae Adams is an obvious one that on a lot of people's minds is like, let's bring Devonta back. If they do that, it probably tells you that one or both of these guys could be not medically forced to like end their careers, but they do not trust in their ability to play. If they don't bring guys towards this room, it probably is good news in terms of, yeah, they do believe they will be ready to go. But with, like, especially with concussions, I don't think you can ever have the certainty like what another hit will do to the body. You know, with Christian Watson, it could be slightly more predictable, yet, you know, still a really tough situation because on paper, this is a solid room, But at the same time, this might be a really bad room if both of these guys are out, and that's something that can very, unfortunately, very easily happen. So really very interesting to see how they will address the situation. Because on paper, this is very solid room. Fortunately, in reality, it might be a huge problem. Now let's shift towards tight ends. Here they went with a double dip strategy 2 years ago. They brought both Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave in the same draft. And if I wouldn't show you the draft ranks for these guys, you would probably expect Tucker Kraft to be the higher drafted, because so far he totally outplayed Luke Musgrave. He was able to stay healthy and he was able to stay really good, unlike Luke Musgrave. Does it really matter who was drafted higher? Like, at the end of the day, the strategy was, let's double dip on this position. And like similar to Adrian Cooper and Tyron Hooper this year, like, yeah, I can be critical of Tyron Hooper, and I was at the time, and like I still am. But if you are going for a double dip strategy and you come out with one really great starter, it feels like mission accomplished, unless you used like super premiums, like first round top picks. Here they used second and third round, so like semi-premiums pick, and they came up with, I would say, solid backup in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, that if he has yet another year like that, I feel like you can start to talk about him being top 10 tight end in the league, like the bottom of the tier, but really solid one. As of right now, I would say he's like an average starter out there. Now let's shift our attention towards the offensive line, and we start with the tackles, where Zach Tom, your right tackle, is definitely in there with the best of the best. Like, he's not elite, he's not top 2, but is he third best right tackle in the league right now? Behind Penei Sewell, behind Lane Johnson? I think there is definitely an argument to be made. Insane hit, second round pick, very nice development. Every year he just improves. And that's really means something, because like he started really up there. And for a fourth round pick, what a find by Brian Gutekunst. So like he comes out with this one quite often as well. And to top it off, like you've managed to assemble really, I'd say like around 10th to 12th best tackle duo in the league, with 4th rounder and 7th rounder in Rashid Walker. With Walker, you do have more question marks because of his like even lower draft pedigree, and he's still like really poor run blocker. But I would argue that for a left tackle, you do prefer your guy there to be really good pass blocker, which Rashid Walker is. I would say, like with that, he's kind of an average left tackle. In terms of run blocking, he is among the worst. But I would say when talk about left tackle, that's how you kind of, if you need to choose, like one he's going to be bad at and one he's going to be good and average in terms of really a lot of insane other left tackles in the league, that's how you choose it. So what a find these guys were. They were both in the same draft, 2022. And they also create a little bit of a problem for the Packers. And that problem is both of them are new contract next year. Like they only have 1 year left on their contracts. They would probably expect to have talks about new contracts within this offseason. And from combined around 6.5 million cap hit, we can talk about combined about 40 million. So yeah, like it's a nice problem to have, but it's a little bit of like huge uprise in terms of how much these guys are going to cost. Now let's shift our focus towards interior of this line. And here Packers struggled, I would say, more than expected with like more than they would like with how much they've invested here, but kind of expectedly so. Elton Jenkins, unfortunately, it feels like the age is starting to show its ugly head. I don't think he is like anywhere close to being bad, but like he had his like super great year a couple of years ago, and since then he kind of secured his contract. Really nice. They are paying around, like, what is it? Around 18, 20? Yeah, around 18 million a year. It was 4-year, $68 million extension, so 17 million a year. So, and ever since that, like, it's not like he took his money and disappeared. Like, he is still like trying his ass off. But I would say he was paid based on much better tape than he is showing in last 2 seasons. Is he still playable on guard? Like, he's still a really good guard, but definitely one that I will be looking at summer series to perhaps think about lowering him to just a good starter and not necessarily this inside building block that you have in terms of interior of your offensive line and you pay kind of top bucks to have. His contract is one that you can get out of. I do not expect them to do this year, because this year it would only save 8 million this season and obviously 25 next year, but they can like play him essentially, not saving those 8 millions, but play him this year, and then they could save 20 millions for 2026, which I would say next off season, and if he continues to play like that, he's going to be out. Josh Myers, like, he will always be like kind of tied with Creed Humphrey. Why didn't they pick a better center prospect and future all-star center, and instead they took Josh Myers, whom they don't seem to be extending after 4 years of his rookie deal. Yeah, unfortunate. Josh Myers, like, as we talk about him, like, he is not, like, Packers fans are hating on him because they can imagine what could have been with Creed Humphrey, but Josh Myers on his own is not like he's super bad center or super bad interior player. He just isn't that good. I do expect him to get chance. How dare he's still pretty young, under 27, and I feel like a lot of, like, several teams could look at him and give him like 1 year prove it type of a deal. Perhaps even someone like Seahawks. Though, like, I would probably prefer giving the shot to Oluwatimi than Josh Myers, because with Josh Myers it just feels like this is what he is. But could he have like within himself breakout season? He has tools. He's still reasonably young, and perhaps the Packers environment just was not the right fit for him. I don't necessarily expect that, but it's not like he's this absolutely unplayable center that some of the Packers fans made him to be. Next to them, they hit solidly, it seems like, on Sean Ryan, who like didn't really get opportunity his first 2 years. He was late third round pick 3 years ago, and this was kind of his first chance to really cement himself as a potential starter, and he won a job over Jordan Morgan. I'm sorry if I, like, at the beginning I said that he was a 7th rounder. That was a mistake on my part. But Sean Ryan, like, again, he played solidly. Is he necessarily returning 3 years down the line third round value? No. But he probably showed up to be a starter for next season and not necessarily a liability. We already talked about Jordan Morgan and Judy Alt, kind of veteran signing that played very nice 13 snaps. So that was your Packers offense. I would say preseason with Jordan Love, with a lot of talented wide receivers that you kind of hope that they can glue together and like create this insane wide receiver core. That did not happen. They were much more about the run, about Josh Jacobs, than like even the die-hard Josh Jacobs fan would probably expect before the season. They had nice growth from their tackles. In terms of like overall how this unit necessarily performed, and that's kind of how I feel like it was not bad, but do I feel like super great? No. I know, like, it was Josh Jacobs' show for most of the year. Now let's shift towards defense, and we start with defensive line as usual. And here I would say we will talk about the most disappointing room for the Packers, because neither Rashan Gary, neither Lucas Van Ness necessarily performed the way you expect them to be. Like, Rashan Gary was definitely in the conversation of like a top 10 edge in the league. I don't think he's anymore. I feel like Amazing Starter is really just holding on towards the title. Like in my rankings, like when he wins, it's really nice, but he doesn't necessarily win as often as he would like to. He feels like a nice player, still really good one, but for once you believe that you do have a number one that you are totally happy with, I would say right now it's really on the edge of the cliff whether you can call Rashan Gary number one that you are super happy with. And it's not only this year, like he looked like quite sorry based on his standards, even later half of last year. So Rashan Gary, he is still very, very young, like given how long he's been in the league. Let me check on this one. Yeah, he's only 27, and this was already his 6th year. But I would say similar to like Elton Jenkins, like he put out, they are both like in their 6th year, they put out their best tape 3 years into this, got kind of paid based on that, and ever since that, it's not going this, it's going this. It's not like steep decline, it's not like they are useless player, they are still really good, but you definitely expected at least this when you paid them. And like with Rashan Gary, you pay him, like it was 4 years, 96 million, so 24 million a year. Is he worth that? Nah. I leave you, Packers Nation, to decide that. I feel like he, just like with an Amazing Starter, he just about clings on that, so this doesn't like look like bad contract, it just looks like slightly bad one. And unfortunately, they've invested in this group yet another first round pick in Lucas Van Ness, and 2 years into this, I mean, like, is Lucas Van Ness even a decent starter? Like, I still believe in the talent. I still feel like this guy has a lot to offer, but so far his tape does not necessarily show that. And they even traded Preston Smith, so Lucas Van Ness has more opportunities later in the year. And like, he showed some promise, but are you like super happy that he's going to be your number two? Because it feels like they really like want him to put up or shut him up in terms of like thinking about replacing him, and not necessarily like replacing him in terms of like they would cut him or let him go. I feel like he's going to be a third piece for at least his 4th year of the contract, but they kind of need to know whether he can be more than that, and so far it does not look like that. I would even argue that Kingsley Enagbare could have like better tape than Lucas Van Ness within this year, which is a little bit worrying. It's like good for Kingsley and like overall good for Packers that they have a guy. I would not, but the problem is I wouldn't say like stepping up. I would say playing adequately. It's just Lucas Van Ness, even cannot outperform necessarily that. So overall, you might thought that you have a huge, like a great room. Beginning of the year, Smith, Gary, you hope for second year progress from Van Ness, and with Kingsley, you kind of have this really nice 4th piece. Right now, I'm not certain about Gary being grade 1. Like, I'm certainly he's not a grade 1. He might be a solid 1. And Lucas Van Ness, like, he's not 2. Like, he is, I would say, solid 3. Enagbare is still solid 4, or I would say like good 4. Or perhaps like a solid 3 at the very best. From what could have been, and they, I believe, hoped would be a strength of the team, is not necessarily a liability, but it's kind of not necessarily hugely consequential room. And unfortunately, when you look inside, it doesn't get better, because Kenny Clark, I mean, how often am I going to say this about some of the guys with the Packers? Like, really, they got paid, And like with Kenny Clark, unfortunately, he got paid for the second time last offseason. He's already like in his ninth season, despite not even being 30. So perhaps that's where not necessarily his age is showing up, but just the amount of snaps that he absorbed. He really came into the scene and looked like revelation. He was excellent, like from get-go. Like his first 4 years in the league, you could make an argument that he was potentially like top 10 defensive tackle, and he got justifiably paid. So then he played still really, really good the following years. That's why he got paid second time previous of season. But this year, that was not good. That was not good by Kenny Clark's standard. And like I would argue, he put out the tape of like solid second interior defensive tackle. Not necessarily something you want to pay. How much is that? He signed 3-year extensions worth $64 million. So, and it's not necessarily like you are not on the hook for a lot of dead cap hit if you want to get out of this. So I feel like they will continue play Kenny Clark for next year. And if it's as bad as this was this season, they will get out of the contract. That they would be on the hook for about 55 million in terms of cap hit, and they could get out of it, leaving just 17 million in terms of dead cap. Was this a wise extension given the wear and tear on his body? I mean, like right now in hindsight, it doesn't seem like. But at the same time, when you look what Cam Hayward is able to do with Pittsburgh, if they felt like he is not showing necessary regression in terms of slowing down, it could just be a bad year that he can figure out. They obviously changed defensive coordinators that could also made an impact. So I don't think Kenny Clark is gone or Kenny Clark is done, but definitely a guy that they need to watch. And if he continues to play like this, I don't think he's going to be on the roster for 2026, and they will eat a nice chunk of money in terms of that cap hit. Where you feel better about this room is Devonte Wyatt in his second year in his third year, was making a step into right direction. And like, is he complete defensive tackle? No. Does he have liability, especially in terms of run defense? Yes. But I feel like you feel good about where Devonte Wyatt is, considering that you've always took this as more of I would say long-term project with him, that he needed to learn something. But what is crazy about Devonte Wyatt and Kenny Clark, Devonte is only 2.5 years younger than Kenny Clark. That's kind of crazy. Devonte Wyatt 3 years in the league, Kenny Clark 9 years. So you feel good, not necessarily great. I feel like his return, he was late first, not a great value, but at least he's making steps into right direction. I would say that they probably won't pick up his 5th-year option. That is not going to be super cheap, but I don't think he's your biggest problem. Now let's shift towards guys that were able to back them up. You feel definitely best about Karl Brooks, who you have for 2 more years, and he really feels like if Kenny Clark is unable to resurrect his career, I would say even within 2025 season, they might turn to Karl Brooks to really see what they have in him. Unfortunately, he, just like Devonte Wyatt, is not a great run defender. So in that case, it really feels like they are more able to rotate these 2 guys rather than one of them replacing Kenny Clark. So that's a bit of an issue, not in terms of how good these guys are, but what their strengths are. So yeah, really needs to be something about how you deal with that in terms of roster building. In terms of TJ Slayton, Colby Wooden, I would say nothing really impactful came out of them. The only thing is like the fact that TJ Slanton needed to play almost 500 snaps. Yeah, that's not necessarily great news. He did not look like a capable defensive lineman out there. Now let's shift towards linebackers room, and we've already talked about Edge Cooper, and like he kind of makes this D-line, I wouldn't say look better, but in some games, because of Edge Cooper and how he was able to blitz the shit out of offensive lines, it felt like they are getting to the quarterback like on a reasonable pace. But the problem is it was most of the time not because the front four was able to win their matchups. It was because they were able to scheme pressure, for example, for Cooper. So, in terms of how the defense is able to come after QB, Packers did not necessarily look super bad in that, but it was not necessarily about the front four that you would expect to generate this pressure, but it was much more about the scheme and about Edge. Yeah. Cats are saying hello or halo. I'm not sure. Quay Walker, yet another first round pick that at the time felt like an overdraft, and it's like crazy. Like they really invest, like they go really the other way around going about linebackers. They invest heavily in this group, and Quay Walker unfortunately is not paying off like dividends on that selection. Like 3 years in the league, and like he's still a great athlete, but he don't seem like he is getting the position. So he's definitely a guy that, even after his rookie deal and that ends next season, they won't pick up his fifth year option. That's like certain, or like they could be crazy, but I believe they are not. He is definitely a guy that's going to get like 1 for certain, 2 most likely, and probably 3 shots out there on the free market for like, based on the tape, unreasonable amount of money, but just based off his traits and like the fact that he has been able to play 4 years, and that's sometimes how long it takes for linebackers to really blossom. He's going to be taken next off season for, I would say, 1 year, $10 million, even if he would be looking like this, which is kind of insane, but that's how a linebacker market works. As of right now, like next to Edge Cooper, like he looks even worse, because like Edge from day one is like, yeah, I can do what Quay can do. I am as great of an athlete as Quay is, and I can actually do and play linebacker, which is kind of a good benefit. Beside them, Isaiah McDuffie, Eric Wilson, like you can argue that they kind of both like looked at least as good as Quay Walker out there, which is not like similarly to Kingsley and Agbare. It's not much more saying he is great. It's much more Lucas Van Ness and Quay Walker not necessarily delivering. Now let's shift towards safeties, and like I said, from zero to hero. That's how they turned this room around. Xavier McKinney, the guy that I will definitely need to rewatch during summer, and I really feel like maybe elite starter is something that he's going to enter 2025 season on my grades. He was excellent. And like I said, with Jalen Bullard, he is a solid run defender. And it kind of complements Xavier McKinney, who is still solid, but like if you have a guy next to him that you could pick like one thing that he does average, it would be run defense, because that complements Xavier McKinney nicely. And with Evan Williams, just like with Jalen Bullard, we spent a lot of time talking about how they are able to rotate within each other, kind of complement and play off each other in a way. And Xavier McKinney is kind of that stable presence that can use these two young missiles out there and like really track the whole field with those guys doing some of other stuff. It's a very, very fun room, and if Jalen Bullard, which I believe will happen, is going to have a really good second year, this could low-key be one of the best safety rooms out there. Like, even in terms of like not necessarily just safeties, because they play a lot of the snaps as slot corners. So that's good. But unfortunately, about secondary, there is, just like with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, there is a headache. And then the headache is called Jair Alexander. In his days, prime corner in the league. Right now, still really freaking good. But he is not able to stay on the field. For 3 years in a row, like, you get 40% of the snaps from Jair. And obviously, when you are missing so much time because your body like is getting injured too often, like even when you are out there, like you need some time to get back towards top speed in terms of how you process the game. Like nothing can beat, like no practice can beat game experience in this area, at least in my opinion. Like you can prepare so much, but you are not able to replicate NFL environment during the practice. It's just really freaking impossible. So even when he's out there, he looks just really good. He doesn't look elite to me, at least. But that's still like really a player that you absolutely freaking want as your number one. The problem is you are paying him based on he is the number one, which is, it was like what, 4 years, 84 million, so 21 a year. And like, what is realistic expectations that you have for him in terms of games he's going to play in 2025? Is it 6? Is it 8? On average, probably. On bad days, it might be none. How are you going to deal with this? Because, again, on paper, Keyshawn Nixon, I would say a very solid year, kind of playing all over the secondary. They really played kind of wild in terms of a lot of guys like mixing out position. Keyshawn Nixon not only showing solid slot tape, but also solid wide out tape, like wide corner tape. And Carrington Valentine, I would say, kind of in the same mold. If they have Jair Alexander in the room, that's room that works. Like you can definitely go out there with Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, and Jair Alexander next to Xavier McKinney, Javon Willard, and Evan Williams. Like that room freaking works. It kind of, I don't want to say like stops to work, but suddenly you can get exposed if Jair is not there. And how are you going to approach this? Are you going to cut Jair? Like that would leave a lot of dead cap hit, around 18 million, but you are on the hook for 55 million for next 2 years. So perhaps you can do that. Then you definitely need to go out and look for a replacement, or you once again can flip a coin. Is Jair going to stay healthy? And yet again, just like with wide receiver room, it will not tell us the whole story about Jair's health, because like they were in this situation last year, and even with like Valentine and Nixon not actually being established and not necessarily like Williams, nobody expected Williams to be as good as he was. So like they made this flip last off season. So like if they are not going for big corners, whether it's on free agent market or through the draft, it might still be just flipping a damn coin on this, but it should at least point you to the direction that they trust Jair to be back on at least 80 to 90% of what Jair was in his prime, which is still a damn good corner. The problem is, like, you don't really have much behind Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine. Those are both guys that you are happy with how they are performing, given how much you've invested in them, because like Keyshawn Nixon is so Keyshawn, they've signed him last year for 3 years, 18 million type of deal, so very cheap for a guy that you expect to be your starting corner. And Carrington Valentine is 7th-round pick 2 years ago, so you have not invested hugely in these two guys, so you feel good about how much they are able to produce based on that, but it's not like those are the starters that you cannot look out to improve upon. So, and you really don't have any backups. So with that being said, defense, I would say underperform in terms of D-line, hugely overperform in terms of secondary and even like Edge Cooper as linebacker. That was kind of a strength that they hoped that they would get with Xavier McKinney. And they also had several other guys that you did not necessarily expect to step up in a great manner to step up. Valentine, Nixon, and Evan Williams. So I feel like if you said to the Packers fans, Jair is going to miss most of the year, they would freaking panic. And I'm not saying the secondary was like amazing, but they were not doomed, which would probably be on a lot of people's minds with Jair being gone for so long. With that being said, let's hand out some rewards. For draft hit, yeah, I was bad. You were right, Brian Gutekunst on Edge Cooper. What a freaking find. And like he was, I would say, after Josh Jacobs, he was the most exciting player to watch on this team. And that counts like Xavier McKinney, that counts Jordan Love. It was super fun how they were able to unleash him. In terms of draft blunder, I mean, I go for Jordan Morgan because not winning starting job over Josh Myers, because like I don't feel like it's necessarily like Jordan Morgan should be playing center, but I feel like, and it's potential that their plan is going to be move Jenkins towards center and put Morgan as one guard next to Sean Ryan, not next to, but like opposite to Sean Ryan. Not really being able to beat out Sean Ryan straight up, or like even persuade them to try to make this experience and like fade out Josh Myers. That feels like not a great hit for a first round in his first year. Am I like saying it's not going to happen for him? No, but it's worrying. In terms of cornerstone of his franchise, I said it, he was most of this offense for a huge part of this year. He was really dragging this team behind him. He was excellent. Absolutely freaking amazing performance. Unfortunately for him, it was in the shadows of Saquon Barkley, of Derrick Henry. But if you have not paid attention to Josh Jacobs, and if the fact that Raiders let him go, I like, well, he's probably not elite anymore. He came back to that. He definitely did. An unsung hero is Zach Tom, improving year after year after year. What a find for a fourth rounder. Like I said, he's definitely in conversation for being the third best right tackle in the league. And I would say you don't not necessarily know too much about Zach Tom on average as an NFL fan. Like even a year ago, when you talk about like offensive line of the Packers, you would probably think of David Bakhtiari, despite like his injuries, like he was not able to play for like a huge chunk of games. And you would perhaps you would thought of Josh Myers as as kind of a bust, and Zach Tom would be under the radar, but this dude is freaking crazy. And when you see his round blocking rate like touching 90s, that's very, very rare territory for an offensive tackle. In terms of a flop, I've decided to go for Kenny Clark. This was by far his worst year in the league, and it really felt like he is slower. He is just not as powerful as you would like him to be. Again, I'm not saying that he cannot come back next year, because new scheme, new defensive coordinator, it can take some time to adjust. But as an experienced veteran, with as many snaps that he has under his belt, I fear that it is much more of really body just not allowing him to be 100% of Kenny Clark, which in his days was really excellent defensive tackle. So rewards have been handed out. Now let's look at where this franchise is overall. So Matt LaFleur, I have him as an A coach. I cannot bring myself to put him into A+. I feel like for that he needs, I would say, better success in the playoffs. And also, like, is Jordan Love second year troubles on him? I wouldn't say so. but like he's that excellent offensive mind, so slight jab at him for not being to make it like super work year 2. But again, with Jordan Love, there was a ton of injuries for him, for his players, for his wide receivers, some for his own line. So like I'm not worried. I still feel like Matt LaFleur is definitely top 8, top 7 head coach out there, but to me he just ain't ready for me to be in number 1 category. And I'm sorry for I have not put a new graphic for Matt LaFleur, which I believe I did, but I probably didn't save it into presentation. That sucks. So with that being said, I will put out my thinking hat and remember how I graded them out. So for 2024 season, I feel like Packers deserve to be graded as B minus. And why is it B minus? Because it sounds harsh. Well, they were 1 and done. There were expectations for the Packers, for sure. And some of their key players just did not make progress I would expect. Their draft was like not insane. And Jordan Love, like I said, did not necessarily made you like super certain that he's going to ascend into like top 5, top 7 QB, which I would say based on how he finished last year, that was a hope that he could make this leap in this year. In terms of their QB situation, I would say it's neutral, because like he is very well paid, but he delivers a lot of good things. And unlike with Dak, unlike with Tua, I don't think he's maxed out. So I still believe that he has that potential to become that, not necessarily elite guy, but definitely an amazing starter. I believe that's in his range, that he could be still the top 7 guy in the league. But next year is going to be sneakily very big for Jordan Love. In terms of where they're at in terms of hot seat under Matt LaFleur. So I'm really recalling you my categories from the card that I unfortunately did put in. I'm sorry for that, but I recall. In terms of hot seat, I have Matt LaFleur as 1. Like, I don't think he's going anywhere. Like, they are patient down there with like Packers management, and he's absolutely freaking delivering. I feel like he probably is going to be at least a 10-year head coach for the Packers, unless something like drastic happens. In terms of finances, like you will take a look at how I fill out the roster for the Packers, and it feels like, okay, they have pretty much everything set up. They are paying QB, they are doing this and that, and they have on top of that over 40 millions in cap space. They don't necessarily have like a huge void years in the future. So you would be shocked because you would see I have them as neutral in terms of finances. And here's why. Well, first of all, like we talked about wide receivers and corners, they probably need to invest in those rooms. Otherwise, they are flipping a big coin in terms of health of Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and Jair Alexander. So they are not as complete as the pictures are going to make it look like. That's 1. 2 is, whilst they don't necessarily have like super many void years, they have some on Jordan Love. And also with Jordan Love, the way they structure the contract, the big cap hits are about to come. So the fact that he's on average on what, like 50 millions, something like that. Let me be absolutely concrete on this one. So he signed 4 years, 220 million. So on average, his cap hit would be 55 millions. But they structured the contract. So in 2025, for example, his cap hit is only 30 millions. So you are kind of putting 25 millions down the line. If they were, let's say, honest about this contract, you would not be talking about 40 millions in free cap space, but about 15. So that's deceptive. And also, they have several young players. They require extension for next season. We already talked about tackles. They now cost 6.5 millions, and I feel like at least should cost around 40 millions from next season onward. So whilst their situation right now looks very good or very nice, it's really deceptive. And I would really say that their financials are neutral because they have some bad contracts, whether it's due to injury or whether it's due to decline. I think like Kenny Clark contract is a problem. And Jair Alexander because of injuries as well. So the finances, while on the surface looking very well, to me, they are only in the state of neutral. Strength of this team, I thought about Tom Grossi, actually putting him out there because he's just, NFL fan of the year and really prime representative of Packers Nation. But I actually went for J.H. Jacobs because, he is the only elite player they have. Perhaps that could change with Xavier McKinney. Zach Tom definitely potentially has that mark as well, but what he was able to do for this offense, really dragging them, like when Jordan Love wasn't out there, but even when Jordan Love was out there and was not playing great, he really, they are not making playoffs by any stretch of imagination without Josh Jacobs, and I can say that with super confidence. And he's still freaking young. He's 27, something like that. So there is an argument to be made that the best years could still be ahead of him, though obviously he's in the league for a long time. So perhaps wear and tear on his body is going to start to show up because he is really a tough runner. He tries to play every freaking down. But as of right now, he is their biggest strength. In terms of where they are in terms of their division, I'd rank them as 2 minuses. And some people might question it that it should be 3 minuses, and to me, it should not. Why? Well, it's very simple. While I really like the signing of Ben Johnson and I feel like Chicago is on the uprise, there are some things about how their ownership now struggles after the death of their owner. So there's a lot of tension there. And also, they are far from certain to arrive to be great. I do believe they will be, but far from certainly. And also, with the Vikings, there is huge question mark around JJ McCarthy. They can quite easily decline in 2025. With the Lions, I think they are still juggernauts. So, while on surface, again, this would look like one of the worst situations in football, I don't say it isn't. I wouldn't say it's one of really the worst from perspective of the Packers. If you are Bears, perhaps the situation is different, or if you are Vikings. So that was the state of this franchise. I'm sorry for the missing graphic, but I hope that I was able to do it well with just my voice. And now let's check how this roster could shape up in 2025. So in terms of O-line, I really feel like this could be, they do not invest in this group super heavily. They bring up some backups or draft someone, and they move Elton Jenkins towards the center and play Jordan Morgan, and really go with this as it, not here it is, because that's little bit thinking out of the box, because it requires Elton Jenkins to play a center, so you can fit Jordan Morgan in. But it's a possibility. They could also take a look at this and sign a veteran center and let Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan fight it out. And perhaps with Elton Jenkins continuing decline, they could decide midway through the season or for next year, for 2026, that they are going to go with Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan, and they will cut Elton Jenkins. But as of right now, I do expect them to have Sean Ryan, Jenkins, Walker, and Tom starting, with Walker and Tom absolute certainty, and figure it out whether it's going to be trying to push one of the guards towards center to fit Jordan Morgan in, or if they bring center in and kind of let the competition play out between Ryan and Morgan. In terms of playmakers, I put Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson here, but there is a huge chance that they are both injured. They cannot play, and suddenly this picture looks much more bleak. Right now, it looks great. You have great Josh Jacobs, you have Tucker Kraft on the upright, you have Jaden Reed on the uprise, and you have this really nice pieces behind it. But this picture could be very deceptive. In terms of backups, I feel like you have several that you feel really good about. Malik Willis, for start, I feel like he really understands what he needs to be when Jordan Love is not out there, and he could thrive. Emmanuel Wilson, like I said, I really like what he was able to do with Josh Jacobs out. Dontavion Wicks, as number 4 wide receiver, he's probably one of the best out there. If he suddenly needs to be your second best wide receiver, that's a little bit of a problem. Luke Musgrave, I still trust that there is some talent in there, though he was not able to necessarily show it up so far. And Jordan Morgan, we already talked about, him perhaps like pushing for the starting job and potentially moving Elton Jenkins towards the center. In terms of defense, again, this is going to look very, very filled out. But with Kenny Clark and Rashan Gary not having best of years, Devonta Wyatt, you feel better about him than you were a year ago, but he definitely did not ascend to be like this premium player. And Lucas Van Ness did not even do a step that Wyatt took so far. So, on surface, this doesn't look bad, but contrary to how much you've invested in this group, whether it's draft talent and money, they don't feel like they are able to repay you with a lot of production out there for how much you've invested in them. Edge Cooper, Quay Walker, they feel like a starting duo for next year, and you feel great about Edge, and you hope that Quay is going to finally emerge. It is a year where he could go from 1 year proof type of deal, 8 million towards, someone is going to take a swing at me for 3 years, 45 million if I show up a good linebacker tape in 2025, despite, not having really 3 good years before that, because we've seen that with Patrick Queen, we've seen that with Jermaine Edmonds. For these type of guys, 1 year of really good linebacker tape can really mean that they are going to pay insane amount of money, despite what the tape would suggest 3 years prior. So I feel like Quay Walker should have all the motivation in the world to really show up. Is he capable of that? That's another thing. And again, we arrive to secondary and it feels really filled out, and on surface it looks really good. But once again, if you put Jair out of this room, suddenly you don't have number 1 corner that you are happy with. If your corners are outside corners are Kennington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon, you can struggle in a lot of the games. And even great safety room cannot necessarily bridge that towards not being a problem. In terms of backups, I feel you feel good about Cara Brooks as your backup and potentially a replacement for Kenny Clark. And in Kingston Enagbare, feel good for him as 3rd to 4th option. Is he going to be forced to play much more because Lucas Van Ness won't step up and they won't have too many other options? Yeah, that's also a possibility. In terms of other position, I don't necessarily feel like there are clear candidates for the job. So, like I said, on the surface, this team feels complete. This team feels filled with young talent. It's not as good as it looks, unfortunately, for the Packers. They are still in overall very good space. They have really good head coach. I do believe in Jordan Love in terms of he has an upside. Can he reach it? But I feel much better about him in terms of his contract because he did not boomed in this year, which I feel was definitely a possibility. So there is definitely a good feeling in Packers Nation, but does this team have makings of a potential juggernaut? A lot of things would need to go right. With that being said, this is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for listening. If you guys don't follow me, follow me and don't follow Tom Grossi or that franchise guy, I highly recommend you to do so, because both of these guys are absolutely insane content creators out there. So with that being said, bye bye and see you with the next one.